Okay, so now we're going to talk about an amazing time for the African American community called the Harlem Renaissance. And we're going to find out that some things happened that lead up to this period from 1919 to 1930. And what happens is African Americans are going to start sharing their ideas, and not just ideas about race or mistreatment, but their art, their culture, bringing back African culture into the artwork and their culture. That's what we call it, the Harlem Renaissance. Renaissance meaning rebirth, and Harlem is an area, historically African American area in New York City. We'll talk more in depth about that. So first of all, before we get started, I want you to look at this painting. This is actually one of my favorite paintings. It's called Nightlife, and it's by Archibald Motley. And Mr. Motley, you could see, he said that he was celebrating life. And he had learned, he's actually from New Orleans, he was from the South, and moved to Chicago, the North, to work at the Chicago Art Institute, which is one of the most famous art institutes in the world today. And you could see his play with this tone and color, where he really, the predominant color is purple, and that might have some representation or link to African American skin and the beauty of their skin color, but also you can see what the people are doing. They're dancing, and they're having a good time at a club. That's why it's called Nightlife. And they're just celebrating life. So it's a really positive painting, and it's very vibrant, and you just can't look away from the colors. Now we're going to hear a very famous song by Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong, interestingly enough, is from New Orleans as well as Archibald Motley. And Louis Armstrong is arguably the most famous blues and jazz musician. When you study it in music, I'm sure you've heard of Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong is a really interesting person in itself. He has a really tough life. Grows up essentially kicked out of his house. His mother had done some illegal things and had put him out on the street. And he'd gotten picked up in an orphanage, joined the band, and took up the instrument, the trumpet. So this is his famous song called Black and Blue. I want you to listen to this and analyze the song, which means break it down and think about what is he really singing about. It's just a couple minutes, just enjoy. To be so blinded. So that was the famous song Black and Blue by Louis Armstrong. As you could tell, the blue is probably, I think he's trying to explain how he feels as an African American that grew up in the South. And the conditions are just absolutely horrible. The springs in his bed. He said even a mouse ran from his house, so mice wouldn't even come to his house. Things are so bad for him. And then the black is a reference to his skin color as an African American. So he's black and blue. Now we're going to watch a short 48-second video on the Jazz Age made by Vocabulary. I just want you to pay attention, get some of the key ideas, and write down some key terms. Here it goes. Okay, so that's a real quick video, but there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in this unit when we talk about the 20s. Now, we're talking about the Harlem Renaissance now and how this is going to occur, but we're going to break it down. We call the whole time period people refer to as the Jazz Age. We're referring to the fact that jazz becomes popular at this time. Not invented, but becomes popular, not just in the African American community, but in America and the world. People are going to envy jazz. Also, we call it the Roaring 20s sometimes, because roaring meaning great or good, because a lot of wealth and people are increasing in wealth and success. So we're going to find out how is it possible for a Harlem Renaissance? What's going to set it up historically? And the major cause of the Harlem Renaissance in a lot of ways is going to be the Great Migration. So the Great Migration, and we know migration means to move. So birds migrate north in the summer and south in the winter. Well, people move all the time. And we've discussed this usually for economic reasons. Okay, so get this down. Now, first, one of the big drivers of African Americans migrating or moving from the south to the north is going to be the Ku Klux Klan. Now, the Ku Klux Klan is a white supremacy group that believes whites are superior, better than all other groups. They would lynch and treat African Americans horribly in the South. So you could see just some of their intimidation techniques on the left-hand side. The top picture, they're burning a crucifix or a cross to intimidate and represent the fact that they are actually strongly Christian, and they try to use the Bible to justify their racism. And then you can see on the bottom picture, you see this African-American man is watching the Klan protesting or walking down the street to intimidate others, and you can just see on his face, I wonder what he's thinking. Is it disgust? Is it fear? Or just frustration? What is going on? But one of the horrible techniques they would use to intimidate African Americans is they would do what's called lynching. Now, lynching is different than hanging. First of all, lynching is when you are, well, let's define it. To lynch means to hang a person without a trial or going to court. So hanging someone, you could go to court and somebody could be accused of being guilty, and you could actually hang the person. But lynching is actually, what would happen is a lot of times, unfortunately, especially African American males, be accused of something, like saying the wrong thing to a white woman especially is a horrible example, and they'd kick down the doors, they would take the guy out, and they would hang him. It would be a mob of white people hanging the person, and there's no trial. We don't even know if they did anything wrong, but just the hearsay was just so powerful in the South that they would actually do this, and then there'd be no consequences. The people that did lynch the person would get away with it, because everybody would know who had done it, but nobody would have any consequences. They would be able to prosecute them. So with these things in mind, what had happened is that we talked about after Reconstruction, you had the Black Codes, but in 1896, the famous Plessy versus Ferguson case established separate but equal laws, in the South, like Jim Crow laws. So people that are going to challenge those laws are going to pay the punishment. So what happens is Homer Plessy is on a train in New Orleans, and he's on a Ferguson train line, and essentially I think he was something like 1/8 African American, and the guy goes up to him, one of the train conductors goes up and says, "You're going to have to get up and move to the back of the train." He says, "I don't understand why." "Well, you're not white, you're going to have to move to the back of the train." So he does, but he also knows that he's going to sue the train company because he thinks it's against the law to make people sit in certain areas. Well, unfortunately, this goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court supports it. It says it is acceptable as long as you are separate but equal. So if you have a combination of separate but equal, so you could have separate train booths on the same train, and one's African and one's white, as long as the booths are equal. This is going to get completely out of control, and you guys have heard in the past, this is not going to just be applied to trains in the South. It's going to be applied to schools, it's going to be applied to water fountains, it's going to apply to bathrooms, to restaurants. It's just going to get out of control. Alright, so now we're going to look at how African Americans and where they would move to. And you can see the map above, and you can follow that a lot of people from Texas would move out west. They'd also move up to St. Louis. Can you see what states? Take a second. What states did people leave the South and move to St. Louis? Mostly through. Okay, and I can see that Texas, New Orleans, that's Arkansas, and also there's a lot of people from Mississippi and St. Louis area. So what happened is these harsh laws had forced many African Americans to leave the South during this Great Migration. And when I say people got up and moved, I don't mean 2, I don't mean 3, I mean hundreds of thousands of African Americans are going to get up and just leave the South. But when they leave the South, they're going to bring their culture. So this is going to be a cause of the Harlem Renaissance. We're going to find out. Now, let's define the Great Migration. The Great Migration was when hundreds of thousands of African Americans moved to northern cities in search of a better life and factory jobs. Really, we say it starts about 1910, ends about 1930-ish, really after the Great War. Now, I'm going to show you one quick video, and I want you to think about how things are going to change when African Americans come to the North. They bring their Southern culture, because most African Americans are from the South originally because of the slave trade. Let's watch this real quick video, and then we'll take a break.
Why does the Negro leave the South? Indeed, you would feel a large part of the answer could be on this train. In this Jim